Orlando's tourism industry, worth $94.5 billion, employs 468,000 workers who cannot afford to live in the city they serve. This is America's most visited destination, where record-breaking profits exist alongside an affordable housing crisis that forces the very people who make the magic possible to choose between homelessness and impossible commutes. Orlando welcomed over 75 million visitors in 2024, which cemented its position as the top tourist destination in the United States. The numbers are staggering. Visitors spend $164 million every single day. The tourism industry generates more economic impact than hosting 2 Super Bowls every week for an entire year. But beneath these extraordinary figures lies a troubling paradox that reveals the dark side of America's service economy. While tourists flood into Orlando's theme parks, hotels, and restaurants, the people serving them are being priced out of their own city. The average rent for a 2-bedroom apartment has climbed to $2,100 per month, yet the typical hospitality worker earns just $22.60 per hour. Do the math, and the problem becomes crystal clear. These workers would need to earn over $35 an hour just to afford basic housing, without spending more than 30% of their income on rent. Mark Bishop, who has spent years driving tourists around Orlando, puts it bluntly. People at the top make all the money, and the people at the bottom, they take what they can get. His words capture the essence of a system where extraordinary wealth creation and worker poverty exist side by side. The statistics paint a stark picture of this divide. Tourism supports 37% of all jobs in the Orlando region, with over 288,000 people directly employed by hotels, restaurants, and attractions. In Orange County alone, 42% of all jobs are tied to tourism. These are not just part-time positions filled by college students. These are the backbone of Central Florida's economy, yet the wages have not kept pace with the cost of living. Consider Sergio Navarrete, a hotel worker near Disney Springs earning $14.50 per hour. He describes living in constant fear of financial collapse. And everything is more expensive too, and that adds another fear of financial collapse, because what if I get terribly sick? What if my partner does? We cannot possibly recover from that. His story is not unique. Across Orlando, thousands of full-time workers face the same impossible equation. Wages have not grown as fast as housing costs. The housing crisis did not happen overnight. In just 2 years, from 2020 to 2022, average rents in Orlando climbed over 30%. Meanwhile, median household income rose only about 20%. This gap has created what experts call a cost burden. A majority of Orlando renters now spend more than 30% of their income on housing, with 28% spending more than half their earnings just to keep a roof over their heads. The National Low-Income Housing Coalition ranks Orlando as having the 4th highest shortage of affordable housing in the entire United States. The region lacks approximately 94,000 affordable housing units, and for every 100 extremely low-income renters, there are only 18 affordable units available. Amber Carroll, Executive Director of the Brevard Homeless Coalition, explains the cycle. Our wages do not compete with housing prices, so we are trapped in a cycle where the inventory just does not support the need. To truly understand the magnitude of this crisis, consider that a worker earning Florida's minimum wage would need to work 98 hours per week to afford a fair market 1-bedroom apartment. Even at the current $13 per hour minimum wage, which will rise to $15 per hour by 2026, thanks to a voter-approved constitutional amendment, the math simply does not work. A fast food worker earning the average $14.19 an hour would need to work more than 40 hours a week just to afford $738 in monthly rent. But the average 2-bedroom apartment costs $2,100. This wage-rent gap has created an invisible population of working homeless. Martha Eyre, CEO of the Homeless Services Network of Central Florida, describes a troubling trend. Our options are declining, while our numbers are going up. Many adults experiencing homelessness in Orlando are employed full-time but simply cannot afford housing in a community they call home. the 2025 point in time count recorded 2,781 homeless individuals across Orange, Osceola, and Seminole counties. While this represents only a slight increase from 2024, advocates suspect the real numbers are higher due to a new state law that has made homeless encampments illegal. The legislation took effect in 2024, and it has scattered the homeless population and made accurate counting more difficult. Meanwhile, the tourism industry continues to break records. The 2024 economic impact of $94.5 billion represents a 2.2% increase over the previous year. State and local governments collected $6.7 billion in tax revenue from tourism, reducing the average household's annual tax burden by $7,474. For Orange County residents specifically, tourism reduces their tax burden by $10,200 per household. The major theme parks, which anchor Orlando's tourism economy, have begun to acknowledge the wage problem. In March 2023, Walt Disney World reached an agreement with unions representing 45,000 cast members to bring hourly pay to $18 an hour by December 2023 and to over $20 by fall 2026. The deal came after public pressure, including criticism from Senator Bernie Sanders, who said, "If Disney can afford to give $20 million as a golden parachute last year to a CEO who did a lousy job, it can afford to pay Disney World cast members who are struggling to pay the rent and groceries a minimum wage of at least $18 per hour." Universal Orlando has also raised wages, with starting pay increasing to $18.50 per hour as of September 2025. These increases represent significant improvements for some workers, but they still fall short of what housing experts say is needed to afford local rent without being cost-burdened. The commute crisis reveals another dimension of this problem. According to Link's public transit data, workers traveling to the International Drive Corridor, the heart of Orlando's tourism district and home to the Orange County Convention Center, the nation's second largest, face some of the longest commute times in the entire transit system, averaging 90 minutes to 2 hours each way. Jonathan Wolf, founder of Wendover Housing Partners, describes the daily reality. In this district, there are about 100,000 people who come in every day to work, and there is no affordable or workforce housing in this district for those workers. The lack of nearby housing forces tourism workers to live farther and farther from their jobs, creating what amounts to a daily migration. Workers drive from Kissimmee, Sanford, and even beyond, spending hours in traffic and significant money on gas and vehicle maintenance. For many, this commute consumes both time and income that could otherwise improve their quality of life. Future transportation solutions like Sunrail expansion could help address these commute challenges, but current options remain limited. Orange County attempted to address the housing crisis through rent control. In August 2022, the County Commission passed a rent stabilization ordinance by a narrow 4-3 vote, placing the measure on the November ballot. Despite immediate legal challenges from the Florida Realtors and the Florida Apartment Association, the initiative passed decisively, receiving nearly 60% of the vote. 225,979 ballots were cast by residents who wanted protection from unlimited rent increases. Commissioner Emily Bonilla, who sponsored the measure, pointed to the urgency of the crisis. "If you look at the evictions, the number of children and families living on the streets, the rent increases, we have seen an extraordinary jump in those numbers," she said. The measure would have capped annual rent increases and provided some stability for renters facing displacement. However, the real estate industry's legal challenge succeeded. The Florida Supreme Court declined to hear the case in April 2023, effectively killing the rent control measure. At the same time, the state legislature passed industry-backed legislation prohibiting cities and counties from placing limits on rent increases, preempting local efforts to address housing affordability through House Bill 627, known as the Live Local Act. Cynthia Laurent of Florida Rising, a housing advocacy organization, expressed frustration with the outcome. The way we view it as an organization is that the DeSantis-appointed Supreme Court really took the easy route out by deferring to the legislature's Live Local Act, which preempts rent controls in all situations, even in the case of an emergency. "We think this is collusion and really silences the voice of the voters," she said. the defeat of rent control highlighted the political challenges facing housing reform in Florida. While residents voted overwhelmingly for protection from unlimited rent increases, state-level politics and industry lobbying power ultimately prevailed. The Florida realtors argued that rent control would have unintended consequences that can make matters worse, and advocated instead for public-private partnerships to create more housing units. One such partnership is beginning to take shape. As Universal Orlando prepares to open its fourth theme park, Epic Universe, in May 2025, a groundbreaking affordable housing project is under construction nearby. Catchlight Crossings will provide 1,000 units of workforce housing on a 20-acre site that Universal donated. The project represents a new model for addressing the housing crisis, with major employers directly investing in housing solutions for their workforce. Of the 1,000 units, 600 are reserved for residents earning 30 to 60% of the area median income, while 400 units will serve workforce housing for those earning 80 to 120% of median income. Ryan Von Weller, Chief Operating Officer of Wendover Housing Partners, which is developing the project, acknowledges the scale of the challenge. "We can do another 5, 6, 7,000 units and probably not satisfy the immediate need," he said. Beverly Cassius, a member of Florida Rising, sees the project as a positive step, but notes that even these affordable rents may stretch budgets. $1,000 would definitely be affordable with the way the market is right now. Honestly, though, with the way wages are running in Florida, close to $800 would be even more affordable, she said. The tourism industry points to its own statistics to defend current wages. Visit Orlando's workforce report claims that the leisure and hospitality industry's average of $22.60 per hour is well above the minimum wage of $13 and higher than that of Florida at $20.30 and the United States nationally at $19.20. The industry notes that wages increased 31% above 2019 levels by 2023. Organizations like UCF Rosen College of Hospitality continue training the next generation of tourism workers, though the economics of these careers remain challenging. However, these industry figures mask significant variation in wages and do not account for the reality that many tourism jobs are part-time or seasonal. Food preparation and serving workers, who make up a large portion of tourism employment, average just $17.47 per hour. Personal care and service workers earn even less, $16.04 per hour. For these workers, the gap between wages and housing costs remains enormous. The housing crisis has accelerated due to population growth and changing housing market dynamics. Over the past 6 years, the influx of new residents to Orlando has nearly doubled. From 2018 to 2021, about 123,000 people moved to the area. In the following 3 years, the Orlando metro area welcomed another 240,000 residents. This population boom has increased demand for housing across all price ranges. Simultaneously, the short-term rentals market has exploded, with more than 20,000 units now operating as vacation rentals in Orange County. These properties compete directly with traditional hotels for tourists while removing long-term housing from the market that local workers need. The broader implications of Orlando's housing crisis extend beyond individual hardship. When key workers cannot afford to live near their jobs, it affects the entire economy. Businesses struggle with high turnover as workers seek better opportunities elsewhere. The long commutes contribute to traffic congestion and air pollution. Social services become strained as working families need assistance with basic needs. Educational outcomes suffer when families face housing instability. In 2024, housing programs successfully helped over 5,000 individuals transition into stable housing, contributing to a 29% decrease in young people facing homelessness. However, advocates worry that housing instability continues to affect many children whose families are just above the threshold for assistance but still struggling with cost burdens. The irony is stark. Orlando's tourism success has made it an unaffordable place to live for the workers who create that success. The city that markets itself as the City Beautiful and the most magical place on earth has become a place where magic is reserved for visitors who can afford it, while those who work to create it live in their cars or face impossible commutes from increasingly distant communities. Looking ahead, the challenges will likely intensify. Epic Universe is expected to bring thousands of additional tourists and create thousands more jobs, but most of those jobs will start at $15 to $20 per hour, still below what is needed to afford local housing without a cost burden. Tourism officials project continued growth, with industry leaders like Adam Sachs of Tourism Economics noting that Central Florida's visitor economy has doubled in size over the past 15 years. The current trajectory suggests that without significant policy interventions or new housing models, the gap between wages and rents will continue widening. Climate change may also affect tourism patterns, but for now, Orlando's appeal seems undiminished. The question is whether the city can find sustainable solutions that allow the workers who power its economy to actually live there. Some hope lies in projects like catchlight crossings and increased minimum wages at major employers. The Disney and Universal wage increases show that public pressure can move corporate policies. Florida's constitutional amendment raising the minimum wage to $15 by 2026 will provide some relief, though it still will not close the gap entirely. The story of Orlando's tourism workers reflects broader trends in American inequality. Across the country, service sector employees in expensive markets face similar challenges. Tourism destinations from San Francisco to Miami grapple with how to house the workers who serve visitors. Orlando's situation is particularly acute because tourism dominates the economy so completely. What makes Orlando's crisis especially troubling is the scale of wealth being generated. An economic impact of $94.5 billion represents extraordinary prosperity, yet thousands of full-time workers cannot afford basic housing. Daily visitor spending of $164 million could fund significant housing initiatives if even a small percentage were directed toward workforce housing. The solution likely requires multiple approaches: continued wage increases, more affordable housing development, public and private partnerships like the Universal Project, and policy changes that prioritize long-term residents over short-term profits are all part of that mix. Without such comprehensive action, Orlando risks becoming a city where only tourists and the wealthy can afford to live, served by workers who commute from ever more distant locations. The human cost of this system is measured in stress, lost time with families, financial insecurity, and dreams deferred. Workers like Mark Bishop and Sergio Navarrete represent millions of Americans who show up every day to serve others while struggling to serve their own basic needs. Their stories remind us that behind every economic statistic are real people trying to build lives in communities they help sustain, but increasingly cannot afford to call home. Orlando's tourism industry has achieved remarkable success by any measure. The question now is whether that success can be shared more equitably with the workers who make it possible. The answer will determine not just the future of Central Florida's economy, but the kind of society America chooses to build in the 21st century.